Welcome to Miss Taylor's class videos, and today we're going to be talking about our special triangles, which are our 45, 45, 90, and our 30, 60, 90 triangles. So, when we talk about a 45, 45 triangle, what we're talking about is that both angles that are not the right angle are going to be 45, which means that both pairs of base angles are congruent, which means that our sides are congruent, which also tells us that this is an isosceles triangle. And so once we know it's an isosceles triangle, some of these things get a lot easier. The next thing that we know is that our hypotenuse, which is the longest leg, which is the leg across from the right angle, is going to be whatever our legs are times the square root of 2. So because all of our right triangles are similar, they're all going to have the same ratio. And so we just happen to know that in these 45, 45 triangles, that whatever the leg is, the hypotenuse is times the square root of 2. So let's look at some example problems. So here I've got one angle marked at 45 degrees, which means I automatically know that the other angle is 45 because 45 plus 90 is 135 and 180 minus 135 is 45. So that tells me that this leg is congruent to that leg. And then it tells me that my hypotenuse is, I know the ratio of my hypotenuse. So if we look at what we're given here, our hypotenuse, equals the leg times the square root of 2. So we know that our legs are 10, and so we're going to multiply that by the square root of 2. Our invisible number in front of that square root is 1, so 10 times 1 is 10, and square root of 2 is our hypotenuse. So if we look here, we're not told that it's a 45, 45, but if we know that these two sides are congruent and we know that we have a right triangle, that's immediately what tells me that this is a 45-degree triangle. So we said it already, our hypotenuse, which is across from the right angle, HYP, equals our leg times the square root of 2. So we know that our leg is square root of 2 over 2, and we're going to multiply it by the square root of 2. So I'm going to turn that into a fraction by putting it over 1, and then I'm going to multiply across. So we know that the square root of 2 squared over 2, so we know that the square gets rid of the square root. So we're left with 2 over 2, which simplifies to 1. So our x, or our hypotenuse, is 1. All right, so again, we are given two congruent legs, which tells me that my angles are 45 degrees. So as soon as I know that, I know I can use my 45, 45, 90 rules, which tells me that my hypotenuse equals the leg times the square root of 2. So in this case, I'm given my hypotenuse. So we're going to put that in the hypotenuse spot. Instead of leg, I'm just going to use the letter x, and then we're going to go square root of 2. So our opposite of multiplication is division, so I'm going to divide both sides by the square root of 2. If I have the same thing on top and bottom, they both cancel out, so our x, or our sides, equal 8. So this is the other type of problem that we'll see. Is again, we know it's a 45, 45 because we've got one marked, which tells me that that's going to be congruent to that. And I've been given my hypotenuse. So we're going to set it up just like we set up the other one. So hypotenuse equals leg times the square root of 2. So our hypotenuse is 12. We don't know what our leg is, so we're looking for x, and it's times the square root of 2. So we're going to do what we did last time, which is simply divide by the square root of 2 and divide by the square root of 2. So here we cannot leave the denominator as a square root, so we have to rationalize the denominator, which means we're going to multiply it by 1, and because we want to get rid of the square root on the bottom, we're going to multiply it by that square root. So once we do this, we're going to get 12 square root of 2 on top, and we've always said that if we multiply the same thing, it's like it's squared, which means we get rid of the square root. So now we're going to look at our fraction right here, and we're going to simplify that fraction. We're going to do 12 divided by 2, which is 6. And so our answer is 6 square root of 2 is our leg. All right. So we've got a square, And what we know about squares from previous units is that squares have 4 right angles and they have 4 congruent sides. And we know that the diagonals bisect the angle. So if they bisect that 90-degree angle, we know, not 40, we know that both of these angles are 45 degrees. And so we now have a 45, 45, 90 triangle. So if our diagonal is 32 inches, can we find the distance of the sides? And then can we find the perimeter? So I want you to go ahead and pause the video and do this just like our last example. All right, so your legs, or your x, should have been 16 square root of 2, which means that when you found the perimeter, you were going to multiply that by 4. Why can't I write down 16? And so 16 times 4, I believe, is 64. Square root of 2 is our perimeter. All right, so now you're going to work the opposite way. So they're going to give you the perimeter. So you're going to have to find the length of one side, and then you need to find the diagonal. So go ahead and pause the video and do this on your own. So what you should have gotten is that the hypotenuse, or the diagonal, was 6 square root of 2. All right, so now we're going to look at our other rules. Our other rule is for a 30, 60, 90 triangle. So a 30, 60, 90 triangle is a little bit more complicated because instead of having the isosceles triangle, it's a scalene triangle with 3 different side lengths. So the first and the most important thing is we always need to identify our 30-degree angle. Once we identify our 30-degree angle, we want to find the side that is opposite, because the side opposite of our 30-degree angle is what we call our short leg. It's going to be the shortest side of the triangle. Then we want to find our 60-degree angle, and our 60-degree angle is opposite of what we call our long leg. And then finally, our hypotenuse is still our hypotenuse. It is still across from the right angle. So we've got to understand the difference between those two. We've got to be able to find our short leg and our long leg and our hypotenuse to do these problems. So your notes right here, it shouldn't just say leg, it should say shorter leg. I think I fixed them on your notes, but I know I did not fix them on mine. So again, the first thing we need to do is we need to find our shorter leg. So our shorter leg is always going to be across from that 30-degree angle. So again, I'm going to try and highlight our short leg every single time. So if we know that that angle's 30, I know that the other angle, it's not marked as 60, and so I know that X is what we call our long leg, or I'm going to abbreviate it with double L. And I'm going to abbreviate our short leg with SL. And then again, our hypotenuse is always across from that right angle. So it's always easiest to find the hypotenuse first when we know the short leg. So to find our hypotenuse, we're going to take our short leg, which I'm going to abbreviate SL, and we're going to multiply it by 2. So we know in any 30, 60, 90 that it's going to maintain the ratio that the hypotenuse will be twice the length of the shortest leg. So the problem tells me that my short leg is 15, and we're going to multiply it by 2, so our hypotenuse is 30. Now we're going to find our long leg. So our formula tells us that our long leg is equal to our short leg times the square root of 3. So we know that our short leg is 15. We're going to multiply it by the square root of 3. So our long leg equals 15 square root of 3. If we're lucky, our problems are that simple and that easy. All right, so in this problem here, again, I always want to find my 30-degree angle. So if I'm given 60, I want to mark the other one as 30. And I always want to identify and highlight that short leg, because the short leg is the key to finding the rest of the information. Then I'm going to find my long leg. Let me go ahead and write short leg next to Y. And then, of course, we know our hypotenuse is across from the right angle. So our formula tells us that the hypotenuse equals the short leg times 2. So I'm going to fill in all the information I have. So I know that my hypotenuse is 22. We were calling our short leg in this problem Y, and we multiply by 2. So the opposite of multiplication is division. So I'm going to divide both sides by 2. So 11 equals y, or 11 equals my short leg. So now that I know what my short leg is, it becomes a lot easier to get my long leg. So my long leg is the short leg times the square root of 3. So we know our short leg is 11. We're going to multiply it by the square root of 3. And so our long leg is 11 square root of 3. So this is the other type of problem that we're going to see right here. So again, I'm always going to find that 30-degree angle, and I'm always going to highlight that short leg. So short leg is here. Sorry, I got off on my color coding. I apologize. And so our 60-degree angle there. So this tells me that 9 is my long leg and that y is my hypotenuse. So we're given our long leg. So we're told that our formula for our long leg is long leg equals short leg times the square root of 3. So now I'm going to fill in all the information I'm given. I know my long leg is 9. The problem calls my short leg x. And we need to multiply it by the square root of 3. So we're going to divide by the square root of 3, which means now we need to rationalize our denominator. So we're going to take 9 square root of 3, and we're going to multiply it by a fraction that equals 1, which is square root of 3 over square root of 3, which lets us get rid of our square root. So we get 9 square root of 3 on top, and the square root of 3 times the square root of 3 is simply 3. So now we're going to simplify our fraction, and so I get 3 over the square root of 3 equals x, or my short leg. So to find our hypotenuse, we're going to take our short leg, and we're going to multiply by 2. So I'm going to fill in the information I have. So I know my short leg is 3 square root of 3, and we need to multiply by 2. So if we remember in the first set of our notes, when we talked about multiplying expressions with radicals, we're going to multiply our whole numbers together, and then we're going to multiply our square roots. So I'm going to multiply 3 times 2, which gets me 6. And since I only have one square root, I'm going to go ahead and write it down. So my hypotenuse is 6 square root of 3. All right, so a yield sign is an equilateral triangle with the side length of 36. So equilateral means that all the sides are the same, so they're all going to be 36. And it also tells me that all the angles are going to be the same, so they're all going to be 60 degrees. So it wants me to find the area. So to find the area, our normal formula is 1/2 base times height, but I like to rewrite it as base times height divided by 2, just because it makes the math a little bit easier to do, and I don't have to worry about 1/2. I can just divide by 2. So to do our formula, we need our base, which is the bottom of the triangle, and then we need the part of the triangle that is the height that meets it at a perpendicular angle. So this base that I just drew has now turned this half of the yield sign into a 30, 60, 90. So we have our hypotenuse, which is 36, because that's what's across from my right angle. So hypotenuse equals short leg times 2. Sorry, I switched up my rules there for a second. So if our hypotenuse is 36, and our short leg, we're going to keep calling it short leg, times 2. So I'm going to divide by 2 to get rid of the 2's. So 18 equals my short leg. So this part to this part is going to be 18. So now I can use my short leg to find my long leg. So we know that long leg equals short leg times the square root of 3. So if our short leg is 18, then our long leg is 18 square root of 3. So that's going to be my height, which is this part right here. So to find area, I'm going to go base, which is 36. Let me switch colors. It'll make it a lot easier to see. So area equals base, which is 36, times the long leg, which is the height, times 18 square root of 3, all over 2. So we're simply going to multiply my numbers. So do 36 times 18, which let me find that math which is going to be 648. And then we're just going to tack on that square root of 3 and divide by 2. So we're going to simplify this fraction here, which gives us 324. Square root of 3 is our area, and that would be inches squared. All right, so I want you to do this problem on your own. So I want you to go ahead and hit pause. It's going to be a lot like that problem that we just did, just without finding the area. All right, so you should have gotten a base that was 6 inches long. There's supposed to be an E somewhere in there. All right, so now let's go ahead and talk about this problem. So it's going to be the easiest thing to do with this problem is to go one triangle at a time. So you need to find your hypotenuse for this triangle, and then you need to find your short leg because it's across the 30 from this triangle, because we need to find what this length of our triangle is to do the rest of the problem. So then, once you've got that length and you've got your short leg, which you really only need your short leg to find your hypotenuse, we're going to look at our big triangle. So we need to find what is this distance, and we need to find what this distance is, which is if we have our hypotenuse, we can find our short leg and we can find our long leg. And once we do that, we're going to use our base. Actually, what I'm highlighting right now is your height. And then you're going to use your base, and you're going to find the area of the big triangle, because area is base times height over 2. So why don't you go ahead and pause the video there, and I want you to find the area of the big triangle. So your area should have been 98 square root of 3.